As a gateway to the Orient, Hong Kong has a major place in history as a port and as an international financial hub. The city's wealth grew as trade flourished between East Asia, Europe, and America. On Queens Road Central, a very modern office tower rises where a humble little building once played its role in the war against Japan. Though not a military stronghold, Hong Kong was a major link between East and West. 70 years ago, number 18 Queens Road Central was a very ordinary two-story building. On the first floor, there were shops. The second floor was home to a company that traded tea. In March of 1939, number 18 Queens Road Central was in the spotlight. The Hong Kong police had raided the building, seizing files and arresting 5 people. The events leading up to that police raid began in September of 1937, far away on the Chinese mainland. In the mountains of Shanxi province, a man using the name of He Lu Hua worked for the Red China News Agency. It operated in a deserted temple, and the agency's tiny staff consisted of He and 2 others. Proficient in 5 languages, he listened to the radio and translated news reports. Transcripts of these foreign dispatches were sent to the leaders of China's embattled Communist Party. In Yan'an, only communist leaders, Mao Zedong, Zhou Enlai, and a few other senior party members knew his real name, Liao Cheng-jia. His father, Liao Zhongkai, had known Sun Yat-sen in 1903 and was one of the founders of the Chinese United League. His mother, He Shi-eng-ning, was a senior member of the Kuomintang. Liao Cheng-jia had joined the Communist Party of China a decade earlier. After becoming a communist, Liao was imprisoned by the nationalist government. After getting out, he adopted his mother's name to avoid being arrested again. Liao Cheng-jia was now known as He Lu Hua.
廖承志1934年，那么加入中国工农红军红四方面军，是带着镣铐参加完2万5千里长征。本来张国焘准备要秘密处决他，因为廖承志画一手好画。 而且又懂得印刷的技术，尤其是廖承志绘画领袖的塑像，所以暂时就把他留下来了。
Liao's fortunes improved in 1936 when he met Zhou Enlai, a leading figure in the Communist Party. Zhou argued for Liao to be readmitted to the party and brought to Yan'an.
在延安时期，他有一个重要的工作，就是侦听外国电台，给中央首长提供重要的情报。那么，经常彻夜里他不眠。
Party leader Mao Zedong often dropped by to read the bulletins. Sometimes he and Liao discussed the international situation. After 3 months, Liao became the editor-in-chief of Liberation Weekly. He was also appointed director of the Central Publication Bureau. In his spare time, he engaged in practical jokes.
他跟肯庚啊是一对活宝，那么2个人啊，经常闲暇的功夫时候，有时候到仓库里啊翻一些罐头，那么把罐头里的食物吃完了以后，又把罐头的盖儿盖上， 原封不动，好像没事人一样的。
In 1937, Japan began to push deeper into China, and vast areas of the country were occupied. Contact between the Communist Party and the international community was through two routes, Hong Kong and the Soviet Union.
当时啊，就说这个海外的一些援助啊，它这个都靠海运，哎，那么海运呢，就是首先就到达这个香港。
如果我们在香港搞一个八路军办事处，有一些海外华侨的一些物质可以直接通过我们办事处，这你可以就直接到我们八路军手里。
By the end of 1937, Japan occupied Shanghai and Nanjing. Zhou Enlai visited the British ambassador to China, Archibald Clark Kerr, and suggested the Communist 8th Route Army establish an office in Hong Kong to receive overseas aid. It would be done secretly and wouldn't affect the neutrality of Britain. The ambassador sent a telegram to London. After the plan was approved by the British government and the authorities in Hong Kong, the 8th Route Army prepared its office in Hong Kong. In late 1936, nationalist government leader Chiang Kai-shek was seized by his own general and forced to cooperate with the communists. This allowed them to open offices in several major cities, including Shanghai, Nanjing, and Wuhan. Senior communist leaders like Xie Zhuizai, Lin Bo-chu, and Ye Jianying were assigned to these offices. Hong Kong was an important international hub city in the Pacific, so Mao Zedong suggested sending someone important to keep an eye on things.
有人讲，秦伯古就秦邦宪呐，他是我们党内的马克思主义小伙子、理论家呀。有人还提毛泽东的秘书，啊，后来就是广东省委书记，啊，张文彬，他也很有才能。有人提，哎，潘汉年，这个和国民党上层那有密切的联系。 后来考虑来考虑去，颠来颠去，最后选定了廖承志。
Liao was from Guangdong province and claimed to have more than 400 relatives living overseas. Because of this far-flung family and his talent, he was chosen to set up the Hong Kong Bureau. Before he left, Mao Zedong invited Liao to chat.
交给他3大任务。第一呢，就是要广泛的宣传我们中国共产党、我们八路军、我们新四军啊是什么样的党，是什么样的军队啊，我们的政策。 是主张，政策主张是什么？第二呢，就是把海外的侨胞，啊，还有一些外国的朋友，啊，给我们支援的物资转送到我们的抗日根据地。第三，就是要收集各方面的情报。
Once he was in Hong Kong, Liao set out to find a location for the office. Pan Hanian accompanied him. Pan was from Jiangsu and had joined the CPC in 1925. He had once been the director of the 8th Route Army's office in Shanghai. But with that city now occupied by the Japanese, he relocated to Hong Kong. Pan was an experienced resistance organizer in Kuomintang-controlled areas, so he made 2 suggestions. The office must be in the center of the city for the sake of convenience, and have a back door so they could escape quickly. Liao chose the 2nd floor of number 18 Queens Road Central. This building had a back door, and there were shops on the 1st floor. He believed the 2nd floor was more secure and private. In January 1938, a front company opened for business. It was a cover for the 8th Route Army's bureau. The company occupied one side of a partitioned room. On the other side, there was tea. To make it look authentic, the Communist Party sent a woman and her son to work there. The inner office, behind the partition, was where Liao, Pan, and Lian Guan took care of their real business. Born in Guangdong, Lian Guan joined the CPC in 1927 and was sent to Hong Kong in 1936. He was known as Liao's secretary. Liao called himself Fatty. During 4 years in Hong Kong, 22 people worked in the office. But at the beginning, there were only 5. With the office now open, Liao's most urgent problem was how to accept donations from supporters. Now embroiled in a full-scale war with Japan, donations and supplies were received and distributed by the nationalist government. The share given to the communist armies was tiny. As a result, the CPC suggested donations and supplies for the CPC be sent separately. But in Hong Kong, it was difficult to find a bank that would work with the Communist Party. To solve the problem, Liao mobilized friends and relatives. Many of them provided great assistance to the CPC. Dunhuang Zhao was the Chinese manager of the foreign-owned Belgian bank. He was from a rich Hong Kong family, and his wife, He Jishu, was He Xiangning's niece. Influenced by Liao, he sided with the communists.
邓文昭有一个公司叫崇德公司，这是专门进口进出口业务啊。那个通过这个公司来接收这些款项啊，通过华比银行来进行这个业务，这个输送到国内。
The Belgian bank and Chongda gave the Communist Party of China a financial channel. The Hong Kong Bureau placed a message in the Ta Kung Pao newspaper on behalf of the commanders of the new 4th Army and the 8th Route Army. All the funds and materials donated to the 8th Route Army and the new 4th Army should be sent to Liao Chengzhe, our representative in Hong Kong.
那么每每收到这爱国华侨和国际友人捐赠，为了表示这种感谢，就是以这个朱德的名义，这个给华侨、爱国华侨和国际友人写回信表示感谢。
With the approval of the donors, the office published their names and contributions in the newspaper to express their gratitude. This soon paid off as more donations flooded in. In April 1938, Hong Kong citizens alone donated medicine and medical equipment worth over 8,000 Hong Kong dollars. more than the whole KMT budget for the region. In January of 1938, Canadian surgeon Dr. Norman Bethune arrived in Hong Kong, leading a medical team from Canada and the United States. Bethune would later die while working as a field surgeon with the 8th Route Army and be praised by Mao Zedong as a great communist hero. Bethune paused only briefly in Hong Kong before leaving for the front. He told the Hong Kong office that he would need medical supplies sent to him at frequent intervals. The office decided to establish a team to ensure he got what he needed. The office, however, was a semi-public organization, and many people were afraid of public contact with the CPC. Liao felt an organization was needed to raise donations and medical supplies and publicize the war throughout the world. The best choice, as the organization's public face, was Liao's aunt, Sun Qing-ling, the wife of a revered Chinese revolutionary leader, Dr. Sun Yat-sen. The arrival of journalist James Bertram hastened the establishment of the Chinese Defense League. Bertram came to China from New Zealand in January of 1936. He traveled to Yan'an and did interviews at CPC resistance bases. In 1938, he paid a visit to Zhou Enlai and expressed concern about the lack of medical supplies. The wounded were being treated with nothing more than diluted salt water. Zhou asked him to write a detailed report and gave it to Sun Qing-ling in Hong Kong. During this trip to Hong Kong, Bertram joined the Central Committee of the Chinese Defense League. The first meeting of this organization was held in the city's famous Red House. Kennedy Road was once home to a building of red brick. Called the Red House, it was Deng Wenjiao's family home. Deng arranged meetings between Sun Qing-ling, Liao Cheng-jia, and Hong Kong's elite. The house became an important link for the CPC. This picture was taken in front of the Red House. It shows the leading members of the China Defense League. Sun Qing-ling was chairwoman. Secretary General Liao ran day-to-day operations, and Sun's younger brother, T.V. Soong, chairman of the Bank of China in Hong Kong, was the president.
宋庆龄把宋子文放到这个保卫中国同盟里去做事儿，这就变成了一个国共两方高层的一个联系。另外一个对外来讲呢，他用了很多的外国人，其他的帮他的这些个中国人也是外国通，所以在这个情况之下，他跟国际上的联系就变成了一个，也是一个非常好的一个平台。
The League solved the problem of the office not being able to raise donations publicly. T.V. Soong allocated 100,000 yuan from the Bank of China to Liao so the League could purchase medical supplies for the 8th Route Army. Over a period of 3 years, the League provided over 120 tons of medical equipment and medicine.
%40给绅士军，40%给这个八路军，20%给东江游击队。
In the early days, the League's members worked out of Sun Qing-ling's home. In May of 1938, they moved to number 21 Seymour Road. The office was provided by T.V. Soong. They worked there as unpaid volunteers until the outbreak of the Pacific War. The annual reports for 1939 and 1940 show the League spent all the money donated on medicine and other supplies to support the communist armies, Lusung Academy of Fine Arts, anti-Japanese military and political college, refugees, and needy children. The office made great achievements in its first year. But rising anti-Japanese sentiment in Hong Kong eventually brought diplomatic pressure from Tokyo onto the British authorities. Police investigators were sent to number 18 Queens Road Central. They determined that nothing illegal under Hong Kong law was taking place. On March 15th, after Zhou Enlai negotiated with Ambassador Archibald Clark Kerr and with Liao serving as guarantor, the police released Lian Guan and returned the seized documents. The police apologized and said they hadn't known the building housed the 8th Route Army Bureau in Hong Kong. They had received reports from the Dutch East Indies and Malaya colonial government about propaganda material emanating from Hong Kong. After the police raid, Liao abolished the communication point at number 18 Queens Road Central. From that moment on, the office never had a fixed location in Hong Kong. Yet, they managed to establish a relationship with supporters in Southeast Asia, North America, and Europe. The donations were sent via the Belgian Bank and the Chongda Company. The supplies they donated were sent to the front by the Chinese Defense League. Number 18 Queens Road Central earned its place in history because of this office. $30 million overseas Chinese made donations, and many returned to China to join the fight. Their passion to help China repel the Japanese army created huge piles of supplies and long lines of young volunteers. Join us for part 2 of number 18 Queens Road.